Oh, I may have fixed it. Yep.
Hello, okay. Just your mere presence was enough. Thank you. All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Commission hearing. We'll start today's meeting with a roll call. Can we show that all 5 commissioners are present? And then let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if we would. Okay. Next item is oral communications. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to address the commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Seeing that we have one speaker slip.
Yes, and that's Lisa Provenzano.
Good evening, Commission. When I was here last, it was the approval of the Baldwin and Sons development. There were 3 people who really considered the neighborhood and the city and said public health and safety would not let them, their conscience, vote for it. And then they were told by the attorney that they had to vote for it. And I appreciate the people who did not want to vote for it, the person who did not vote for it, and the other person who did not want to vote for it and abstained. Go over to where they're building the penitentiary over on Quail Gardens Drive and Encinitas Boulevard. You can't even always go down the road to Quail Gardens Drive because they move their fences out during the day for construction. Nothing is safe about that. There are 3 high schools right up the street. I live a half a mile from the freeway. It takes me 9 minutes to get there now. So I don't know if the Planning Commission talks to the Public Health and Safety Commission, that should talk to the Traffic Commission, because this is amazing. My neighborhood has 29 homes. The last person who moved out of there died. They had to move out. The person before that, a couple years before that, they died. That's why they moved out. Now we have a house that just got put on the market, another house that's going to go on next year, and another one is determining it by when they do the painting and everything. So, and across the street at Kristen Court, those have gone on sale. There's one up the street. So why are we getting punished as residents who have lived here? I know that you say your hands are tied, but there must have been some latitude when you had them go back and say the 6-story penitentiary-looking thing had to have modifications. And then there just has to be something that you can do a little more for us while you're doing a lot for them. This Baldwin and Son says, oh, well, we're going to be a good neighbor. We're going to put a roundabout there. The roundabout that they put in up the street, which people either say, what is that, or is it done? And you're going to, because there wasn't enough space, then you're going to let them do that. So you seem to be very positive towards them that night. Anyway, I just think everything needs to be considered. Not even for just the people who live here now, the ones who are going to live here. Because I don't know how 1,044 units, at least that many bodies are going to drive out of that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Before we move on, I'd like to make a short announcement. Tonight is Anna Colamusi's last meeting with us. Anna has been our esteemed Planning Commission Secretary and Acting Planning Director for, well, not all of it for 10 years, but she has been with the city for 10 years or more. And sadly, she will be leaving us for another position. Anna has been a steady hand and a knowledgeable guide as we wrestle with the business of the Planning Commission. And we'll miss your cheerful smile and eagerness to help. As sad as we are to see you go, you take with us our respect and admiration for how you conduct yourself, and we wish you all the best as you begin your next chapter. I know my fellow commissioners will want to express their own goodbyes, and we'll take an opportunity at the end of tonight's meeting to do so. But with that, thank you, Anna, for your service to the city and to this commission, and we do wish you all the best in your next chapter.
Thank you so much.
Okay, with that, we will proceed to changes to the agenda. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda? I would make a motion that we move the item 8B, a little more cafe, to the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
I'm not going to support that.
Okay. I think that needs to be unanimous because he could just pull it anyway. Okay. All right. With that, there is no consent calendar to here, so we will move on to the regular agenda items. So tonight we have two items. Item 8A will be the Ortman Twin Homes, case number multi-006843, 2024. I will ask if there's any disclosures from the Planning Commission.
Nothing to disclose.
Okay. And with that, I will ask.
I did a drive-by this afternoon.
Sure. Okay. I've been by it as well. Could we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Takuma Eastland, Associate Planner. The item before you is multi 006843-2024, the Ortman Twin Home Project. The project site, outlined in yellow, is two vacant lots addressed as 2065 and 2067 Oxford Avenue within the R11 zone. The subject property is located in the Cardiff community within the Coastal Overlay Zone. The applicant requests a design review permit and coastal development permit for the construction of a 3,890 square foot, two-story over basement twin home. Also, I do want to state for the record that there's a typo on page 2 and 11 of the staff report. The project description and proposed resolution should read that the proposed twin home is 3,890 square feet, not 3,090 square feet. There's no change to FAR or lot coverage, and the project continues to meet those requirements. Here is a street view of the project site as seen from Oxford Avenue. And here is a view of the project site as seen from the alley. Here is the site plan for the project. Here is the floor plan of the qualified basement. This is where the ADU will be located. Here is the floor plan of the first floor. And here is the floor plan of the second floor. This is the east elevation. The project site has an average lot slope greater than 10%, which requires the proposed structure to measure no higher than 12 and 16 feet as measured from the crown of the public right-of-way. The proposed twin home meets those requirements. Here's the west elevation. On this side of the property, the proposed structure meets the 22 and 26 feet height limits. Here's the north elevation. And here's the south elevation. The applicant held a citizen participation program meeting on March 9th, 2024 at the project site. There were 5 attendees who had concerns about building height and lot configuration. Notice of this public hearing was mailed on March 20th, 2025 to all property owners and occupants within 500 feet of the project site and anyone who requested such notice in writing. One neighbor expressed concern about building height while another requested to see the plans. To the first neighbor, staff explained that the building meets the city's height requirements, and to the second neighbor, staff showed them how to view the plans online. The proposed project has been determined to be exempt from environmental review pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act Guidelines Section 15303A, which exempts the construction of a single-family residence and second dwelling unit. The proposed project meets the city's applicable objective design standards, and staff is able to make the findings for approval of both the design review permit and coastal development permit. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution of approval and approve the project. And this concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions of staff? Bob?
Let me get my thing going here. Okay, in the staff report, page 7 of 76, it talks about, in the first paragraph at the top, the 442 square foot ADU. The last sentence of that paragraph at the top of the page, prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant will be required to record a covenant for each accessory unit. What covenant is that? And should it be stated in the staff report?
It's a standard covenant that the city requires for all ADUs, essentially saying that, among other things, that the ADU cannot be rented for terms less than 30 days.
Is there a phrase for that we could clarify that statement, record a covenant, a standard covenant? What does the code state that covenant is called? I just think it's a little fuzzy. And is there a corresponding reference in the resolution?
Yes, it'll be COV 01, I believe, in the resolution, standard condition.
COV what? COV 1?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, let me just try to find that. Unless you can pull it up before I can.
And if I may, so accessory dwelling units are required to process coastal development permits administratively. The state law identifies that no public hearing is required for them. So
Right.
they are kind of, by default, a part of this scope of work because a coastal development permit is required for the design review of the actual twin homes itself. But normally it would be a notice of decision that's administrative. And a covenant is very typical of accessory dwelling units to ensure that any property owner moving forward understands that it's actually an accessory dwelling unit ADU and has the parameters around it, such as not being able to do short-term rentals within it and things like that that are outlined in that standard boilerplate covenant.
Well, right. I just didn't know if there was a definition of, it just says covenant, and I just was curious if their staff report would say it's the XYZ covenant, or just define, rather than just have the word covenant or the noun, like define the covenant. So if I'm unfamiliar with it, I can go to the EMC and see the covenant. It's more for clarification purposes. So, is there a name for it in the EMC? Or is it just a covenant?
We don't identify
You don't
it
identify it.
specifically in the
Okay.
municipal code as a requirement, but we do require it so that it's very clear from any property owner moving forward. So that is the staff's determination to ensure protections on that property.
All right. Also on that same page, first bullet under design standards and guidelines consistency, the phrase preserving view corridors. Standards are met by incorporating varied setbacks, preserving view corridors. Are view corridors required to be preserved in this situation? Is that a title issue, or is there a view corridor?
With design review, the city attempts to limit the bulk and mass of the structures. And so with that in mind, view corridors are a consideration in evaluating the design review of a project.
So it's in the design review standards, is the view corridor or massing. But we don't have a view corridor code, do we?
It's going to be in our design review standards and guidelines.
Going to be or is?
That's where it is located.
That's where it is, okay.
Yes.
So it is there,
Yes.
okay. Go to my next one.
To be clear on that point, the view corridor needs to be a public view corridor, and is it defined as a view corridor already? Or are you saying any residential lot has a presumed view corridor over it?
It's meant more as not to be an obstruction of views by the neighbors.
And I'll add to that. So yes, there's some language in our design guidelines, and I'm finding one right here that says, view corridors should be provided from public streets. So it's not private views, to clarify the point. But there's guidelines and not objective standards that really talk about how you do view corridors. So the way that we've done that is through the standards that have been provided, as Takuma was mentioning, height, setbacks, and things like that, that provide kind of by default that corridor.
Just as a point of clarification, that's part of the CARDIF by the C specific plan, or is that citywide?
This one is, so the objective design standards are citywide. It does state that the specific plans supersede these objectives unless it's silent. So if it's silent in the specific plan, then we are able to come to the objective design standards and apply it.
All right. Bob, did you have further?
Well, I don't want to hog that. The next one I had was on page 8 of 76, the environmental considerations section. It says up to 3 single-family residences may be constructed under this exemption. Therefore, the twin home may utilize this exception. The project does not qualify as one of the exemptions prescribed under CEQA. Does it qualify as an exemption, or does it not qualify as an exemption under CEQA?
The project does qualify under 15303A because the lots are separate.
Right?
Therefore, each lot has 2 dwelling units.
Okay. But it says, the last sentence, maybe I just misunderstood it, the project does not qualify as one of the exemptions. So, meaning because there's 2 lots, 1 unit, and an ADU, it doesn't trigger section 15300.2?
I do have a comment about that. It's actually a typo. The second exemption should say exceptions, and
Okay.
it's a separate section that has exception criteria. So it's a typo there. It actually
Okay.
should be the word exception.
All right, so is there a corresponding change in the resolution, or is it just here in the staff report?
We can make note of that to
Okay.
ensure that the resolution, because this does carry over to the resolution. So that's
Right.
a great point. Thank you.
Okay. Almost done. Sorry, Steve. I don't think I have many. Have there been any, the CPP letter from Ardolinio Coastal Engineering was July 20th of 24, and the CPP was in February of 2024 and on site on March 9th of 2024. Have there been any material changes to the plans that the neighbors would have been notified subsequent to that CPP and subsequent to is there material change to the design or setbacks or articulation or anything like that that's happened since that time?
No, generally the scope of the twin home would have stayed the same.
Okay. Later on, last one, in that same letter from the engineering company, it says the mailing lists were created by the City of Encinitas staff, and 357 letters were mailed out, of which 43 were returned undeliverable. So that's about a 12% failure rate within 500 feet of the site. Is that an acceptable failure rate? And is the city doing anything to improve upon that?
I can respond to that one. We don't have a specific standard, but if it, there's no exact number for it, but if it grows, then, that could be something that we would consider renoticing, but then the same addresses would keep returning. But there could be things that can be modified in the code that maybe allow, like, for example, there's something right now that says if you can't get to 20 people in a radius that doesn't have that, you have to at least keep going out until you get the 20 people. But there's no specific standard. We just ensure it's not, something like 40, 50% where a significant number. What
Right.
that significant number is, it's not codified.
Not defined?
Correct.
So I'll ask council, is there some sort of standard across the industry that you can think of that would say, 43 people within 500 feet didn't know about this project?
There's no standard that I'm aware of, but it's probably something that we can look into.
Okay. I don't know if I have any more. Hang on one second. I'm getting better at this. So I guess, okay, that's fine. I'll wait for the applicant. Is the applicant going to speak?
They will eventually.
Okay, I'm done.
Yes,
Thank you.
I do have a question myself. If you could pull up the west elevation, the front view. Page. I'm not sure what page it is. It's on the drawings, it's A4, 66 of 76. Yes. On that page, towards the bottom, down near the ADUs, there's two bold dashed lines that are labeled connection line. They seem to be connecting the top of some stairway to the edge of the building. Can you tell me what the connection line represents?
Yeah, so because the twin home has a qualified basement, basements don't count as stories. And so because we're not backing up, height is measured at adjacent grade, the building wall, lower of finished grade and existing grade. And so in this case, because we're not measuring all the way from the bottom of the basement, because it's a qualified basement, we're measuring at the lower of existing and finished grade at those walls. And that line represents those points.
Okay. So the 22-foot height limit, I guess there's a line that's been copied up. It's a mirror or whatever. It's been copied up, that heavy bold line. That represents the 22-foot height limit for the front portion of the building. And the main roof is further back, so it's governed by a different height limit?
That's correct.
Okay. And I understand that section down there with the steps, they've built that step solely to establish grade line higher, because it steps back down after that little bump, right? If we go to page, the next page,
And just a clarification, it looks like the existing grade is higher, so it's actually existing grade, but haven't gone as far down.
right, we would measure the lower of existing or proposed grade, right? So when they dig down to put the ADU, they're reestablishing an existing grade that's lower, except that it's a qualifying basement and they added this stoop in the middle.
Right, they would have to retain that grade in the middle to qualify.
Yeah. Okay, so in the section on page 767 of 76, in the lower right corner, yeah, that one. we're seeing that in section, right? So they've stepped up to establish the existing grade, and then they immediately start stepping it back down. And so as long as that occurs right at the face of the building line, that's deemed establishing grade.
That's correct.
Okay. Are those intended to be, I mean, I'll ask that of the applicant. I appreciate your clarifications. Any further questions of staff?
I just have one more. Is there anything in the code that requires them to give us color renderings? I don't have the skills that you have, Steve, and that Susan has, and all the other projects that have come before us have had a nice color rendering so I could look at the articulation and the colors and the windows, and this one did not, is that something that is required, and if so, was it not, and if it isn't, should we, well, that's another conversation for a work
I don't
plan.
think it's required.
It doesn't explicitly require them. It does say that you have to call out the colors and materials, but the actual colored drawings is not a requirement. But we can, moving forward, we can have staff request those of applicants.
Okay, that'd be great.
Right, and I agree. During my meeting with Anna this week, I talked about renderings for this particular project too, just so I could understand all the different levels, figure out, as I'm not an architect, really understand where the ADU is in this particular project compared to the house itself and the garage. So I do think in projects moving forward, a rendering would be very helpful for some of us.
Yes, so there's two different things, the colored elevations and then renderings like axonometric analyses. And so sometimes we have asked for them, and it depends on the applicant and how much something like that costs for them to do. And so because it's not a requirement, we try to get them as much as possible. But we can, again, try to be more consistent about that.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your staff report. Is the applicant here, and would they like to address the commission?
Good evening, Board of Commissioners. My name is Ryan Ortman, and I've been building and living in the city off and on since 2016. I've built a twin home, which I lived in on Manchester, then built and lived in a home on Newcastle. And so this particular home, I'm planning on living on the northern of the two lots. And so my background is construction. I've been doing it for 35 years. And so I'm excited about the project, and I appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, on the objective design standards, there's a scoring table, and looking at the scoring table, you scored the bare minimum, 18 out of 35. One of the ones which you've got 0 points on seems to me kind of something pretty simple, and that is 90% or greater of the total landscaped area is Southern California native species. I think you committed to 70% in the staff report to score elsewhere, but you've lived here. It doesn't take much to go to 90%. You're at the bare minimum. Maybe some of these other standards don't apply, about vegetated roofs and things like that. So I would like to request that you make an effort to try to achieve that and at least bring your total up above the bare minimum. Or if there's something else on the design standards that you feel is more conducive to your project, maybe you try to do something a little bit more than just the bare minimum.
I appreciate your comments. It's a great question. In going through the process and dealing with landscapers who actually have been born and raised here, many of the plants that you see in our coastal community aren't actually defined by I think it was a Sunset magazine or Sunset criteria for coastal. Many of those plants that you see that you would think were native actually aren't native here. They're actually from Mexico. And so, although they're an adjacent neighbor to us, I found out due to the definition of where the actual plant was native to, that it wasn't. However, it wouldn't be anything that it'd be uncommon for you to see. It was just a definitional difference on the origin of the species.
So you're concerned that the palette provided in the design ordinance is not consistent with your understanding of what a native plant is? That one from Mexico is not qualified? I mean, we've got a pretty extensive palette, that we have an urban tree committee. We've kind of gone through this, so it seems like you're finding the exception. Look, it's a minimum amount here, and you're saying you can't find something in the palette that would bring you to 90%, but you're willing to do 70%. Given the amount of landscaping you have, it's probably like 3 more plants. So I don't know. I just seem like you don't have to do it, and clearly you didn't submit doing it, but it seems like I would hope that you would try a little harder to do more than just the bare minimum. So that's my thought.
Maybe I have a question for you just regarding the general overall aesthetic of the building. I'm looking at the front elevation, and I see 2 roof lines that don't meet at a ridge but create some sort of clear story. I don't know that you're putting windows in the clear story, but can you tell me, I guess I have some concerns about the roof slopes, and I see on one side you're using a 3 and 12, and then on the opposite side a 5 and 12, so they don't meet, at the same ridge. There's designs that do that. That's fine, but it is a little wonky. On the garage, I see you start with a 6 and 12, and then you cut back down at a 3 and 12 on the side elevation. What's driving the design of the roof plan here?
So there are clear story windows in some of the single slope roof. The design of the architecture is not mid-century, it's more of a contemporary style. And I'd have to look at the elevations. I don't know if we can pull those up just to address the comment in terms of the garage slope, but
I'm on page 68 of 76. If we would pull up that's the side elevation, the left or north side. Yeah. So I'm looking at on the left there is the eave line at the garage or the alley.
sure.
Takes off at 6 and 12, then it cuts back down at 3 and 12.
Yeah, it's a great question and observation. So one of the challenges with these lots that are so small, each lot is 25 feet by 100 feet, is one of the requirements of being to screen all mechanical equipment as well as trash cans. And with a 5-foot setback on the side as well as your rear yard of 20 feet and your front yard, it's hard to hide that mechanical equipment. And so one of the things that the designer came up with was to actually put that equipment in a well that's actually located up on the roof to keep that out of sight. And so that was the reason for the design the way it is, where you have the pitch of the roof or the rise and run over 6 and 12 in the front at 3 and 12.
Okay, thank you. This elevation gives me some concern. If I'm reading this correctly, this is all one wall plane with the exception of the main entry, the front door, and the wood section above it in the middle. But along the garage where there is no windows, it's a wall that's 24 feet tall, no offsetting planes. Am I missing anything in the elevation here that would show me that there was indeed some sort of articulation on this elevation?
Well, there is some color variation, but you have to keep in mind that although we can clearly see this as if we're 100 feet away from that side of the home, you would never have that plane as the property line is 5 feet away. And with the slope of the lot and having to go from the street grade to the alley, which is in the rear, there's not a lot of opportunity. Also, if you think about the garage requirements of being a minimum of 19 feet wide, so that top section above where it says metal trim, you're not going to be able to get any articulation in that, because that's where the garage is. Where you have a 25-foot wide lot with a 5-foot setback, the width of the garage is pretty much set. And this is pretty consistent with all the twin homes that you see in the R11 zone, as well as the last 8 homes that I've done as well. That when you have a 25-foot wide lot, 20-foot garage, you're going to have a 5-foot side yard setback. It's going to be hard to have any kind of articulation. There are limitations in terms of the projections in the side yards as far as how much those can project. And so those are just some of the natural
What
design.
is your overhang, the eave overhang or the rake overhang on that side elevation?
I would say, I mean, we have the plans with us, so we can look at those specifically, but I'm going to guess there was 16 inches.
Looks like 1 foot, maybe?
Oh, in the front, yeah, you can see it in the back there is 1 foot. That's correct.
Okay,
Yep, thank you.
thank you for your answers. Any other questions?
There's a bioswell on the site. I didn't see any gutters, so how does water flow on a site like, on a site like this, given it's so tight?
Sure.
What happened? Can you just tell me how the water flows from this site so it doesn't overwhelm your neighbor or your street? So I didn't see, and maybe you don't have to do a drawing
You
for water.
bet. This is the civil engineers here, but I'll try to speak to it, and if I don't speak adequately, Mr. Arlino can jump up and speak. But basically, there's area drains around the whole perimeter of the house. Those area drains, as you look to the left of the screen, follow around to a sump pump, which you see identified as a circle that says sump pump. And then what happens is that all goes into basically a well, looks like a trash can in the ground, and that's then pumped up into the bioswale, which goes through a layered system of different types of soils and rocks and infiltration that cleans the water, then diverts out to the street. So we have a sump pump per lot. Obviously, there's no cross-lot drainage between the 2 lots.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Are there any public speakers on this?
We do. We have one speaker, and that's Richard Hicks.
Good evening. I'm here to speak in favor of this. My wife and I bought the lot right behind this one 30 years ago. Grandkids lived 4 blocks away and then had a beautiful view. So we've been looking at this lot for 30 years and wondering when somebody was going to finally build a house on it, and guess what? It's going to happen. I had only one concern, and that was the view. And I didn't want to lose that view because we got a 180-degree ocean view. I talked with I exchanged an email with Mr. Eastland. I also came down and talked to one of your planners, and they assured me what the height limitations were, that they came within the height limitations are provided for in the city provisions. So I'm a happy camper. I have nothing else to talk about or complain, except that I have met Mr. Ortman and his wife. They're coming to my house Sunday, and we're going to get to know each other a little better. Hopefully we can work out any housekeeping issues that may involve the relationship during construction. And other than that, I urge you to approve this.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is that all?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So with that, I will close the public portion of this meeting and open it up to commissioner deliberation. Would anybody like to start?
I just have a basic question about the area. Is this an area that has storm drains, or is this drainage to the street and then works its way through gravity? I understand the explanation about the bioswale and all of that, but I'm just living in an area myself where we don't have any storm drains, and even though there's projects where the city is assured that there won't be additional water leaving the property, there's a lot of water that leaves the property. So I was just a little bit have some questions about that.
Looks like we do have the engineer on the project here. I don't know if the chair would be willing to open up the.
That'd be great. Thank you.
We'll open up the public comment again.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Arlino, civil engineer on the project. This area does not have infrastructure for storm water really much at all at this location. As you go further down, when you get down to like Newcastle and those areas, that's where you start seeing area drains and curb inlets and that type of stuff. But in these upper tiered streets, there's no infrastructure. So this will all discharge to the street, be conveyed on street, then go downhill, and then find its way to the actual public infrastructure as you get further down the street. So, but there's nothing physically on this street.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. So do you have confidence that this project won't create more runoff than currently exists on the property?
Yes.
Okay, because is that one of the requirements, correct?
Yes, because when the toughest part about when you're taking a completely vacant site and then making completely developed is what the normal criteria you're dealing with in Encinitas is your stormwater treatment volumes. That doesn't govern in this design. What governs in this design is actually the increase in the 100-year storm event volumes. Hence, our basins are very large, and they take up much more front yard than my client wanted to give up. And he had to go kicking and screaming and give me as much as I needed to make sure that the 100-year storm would be detained and mitigated so that the amount of runoff leaving the site does not meet or exceed the existing condition.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'll close the public comment again and open it up to deliberation.
Your point about the north elevation and the wall, and I guess that staff must have felt that it approved. I think, isn't there a 50, in the design guidelines, isn't there a limit to how much wall space there could be? I understand that this house is going to face the neighbor, and there are some privacy issues we've talked about in the past of too many windows looking on the neighbor and such, but I want to follow up, Commissioner Dalton, on your conversation about articulation along that side wall. Is the wood paneling, are we living with the wood paneling or the wood siding and the metal trim as being meeting the articulation guidelines? Is that correct in my understanding? And they meet it with the one window?
I think you're asked to
Okay.
accept that.
Okay.
I mean, I struggle with this side elevation, knowing full well it's 5 feet away from the property line, and
Right.
another house will be 5 feet away from that.
Yeah.
But you do come down the street and see an oblique angle, of the front portion of the side to some extent. This seems to fully max out the side. I've done twin homes in Cardiff. I know you can find other ways of doing articulation, but I'm not here to design this. There's some language in the design guidelines here that I'm seeing that says buildings shouldn't be sensitive architectural detailing with selection of materials to enhance the character definition. Special care should be given to building details on all visible sides of the development, particularly at building entrances.
And I think maybe that's a key point, all visible, because of how this home is situated on the lot, a lot of this plane is not going to be visible to
Right.
anybody, maybe not even the neighbor, because they likely don't have a lot of windows facing this way as well.
Let's see, so the area on the left is the alley, right? And the area on the right, I'm sorry, I'm on my own page, sorry. On the north elevation page, and looking at it where you left off, the area on the left-hand side is the alley.
Correct. The high side.
The highest point, right. Well, I guess you'd have to know, to your point about the oblique view, you'd have to know what the house next door looks like in terms of as you're driving down the alley. I understand that. And is there anything different in the design guidelines versus the alley side of the property versus the front side of the property? I'll ask that question of Anna. I mean,
I'll just
you have 'em?
read
I
you
mean, they're all treated the same way, right?
I'll just say further, it says, although side and rear elevations may be less intensely detailed than the front elevation, some recollection of front elevation materials and detailing should be incorporated. So, the code acknowledges that it will be less intensive on the side and rear, They've carried on the side some wood siding. I presume it goes down below this fence line, or it's not going to have a funny jog in the bottom edge of it like that. But, you know, there's not like window trim. I mean, I don't know. There's
Okay.
maybe
I
to your
could-
point
I-
on the landscape, they didn't go anywhere above and beyond.
Right.
I would like to agree that this entire area is pretty massive to be a flat plane. I don't think it would be asking too much to perhaps add some amount of detail, because although it would be less on areas that are at the rear, there should be something.
I'm not as concerned about the rear. I mean, it has 2 garage doors and it's pretty narrow walls other than that.
I'm looking at that north,
Yes, okay.
and
I get it.
I consider, since that's toward the back, that is kind of considered, you know, rear. It is the side of the building, but it's massive, and as people go by down the alley, they will see it. So I think something, you know, there can be, it's not that hard to come up with a little bit of detailing, something to give your eye some relief, an illusion of articulation, even if it isn't possible with the narrow lot. It is a very narrow lot, but something could be done.
Okay, thank you. I'm also looking at the metal trim, and I think our code says there should be a 3-inch differentiation between materials. You know, I guess at least the way it's drawn, it's not showing any sort of projection or recess of, you know, it'll just be stucco, metal trim, siding, you know, like all in one plane, and there could be some projection of the metal trim beyond the face of the wall beside it.
We saw a lot of buildings with tri-reglet reveal, that kind of thing.
Okay. Any other concerns from the group?
I really think the project is okay, except for the detailing. I like it in terms of, it seems like a smart project. It's respecting the height limit, following standards. But I would like it to follow the standard for having a little bit of more detail, even if that's towards the back, on the side, and even the back elevation as well could have a little bit of something that gives us, you know, just something for our eye to follow.
I would agree that this likely fits just fine into the community. It does have a little bit of a different articulation based on the design. However, it's likely that what we mentioned about not having color renderings is, you know, limiting us to actually seeing it.
Yeah, I'm noticing now that there's areas that don't show any stone veneer, but they're labeled stone veneer. So it looks like a blank stucco wall at the street level, but it's intended to be stone. You can see the stone in some of the side elevations of the, so I do think the renderings aren't helping the project.
As well, we discussed the native plant issue earlier, and they had the palette of plants that were going to be provided on the site in the application, and they looked reasonable and definitely fit well within our area agriculture.
Well, I'm not interested, I mean, I'm interested, I guess, in getting them a decision and presumably an approval tonight. I'm wondering, is there a way of crafting a motion that would, my issue, I think, is the metal trim that's used to differentiate the stucco from the wood, that should have some sort of dimensional offset from the adjacent materials. You know, some effort should be put towards the easternmost portion of the side walls, whether it's some sort of material or not. I'm not as hung up on that, though it's a tough elevation to look at.
Yeah, I don't think I can really press too much on the objective design standard scorecards. He did meet the minimum, so I'd like to, bring a hammer on that, but I really guess I can't because he did meet the bare minimum. So I don't think I can enforce that,
Okay.
Generally speaking.
Chris?
Yes, as an architect, what would be your suggestion regarding the metal trim and how we would word that?
I think it should project, it should be in a different wall plane. It should project, say, 2 to 3 inches beyond the face of the adjacent material. If it's intended to create articulation, I think it has to have some sort of minimum offset from the wall behind it.
They're allowed to have some projection into it,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
On the side yard?
Yeah.
Well, do you want to define that it needs to project the metal, or just give the applicant the opportunity to come back and provide an alternative that better meets his design standards, or we go with our resolution? Or our proposed potential resolution. I don't want to enforce something that he doesn't want to do, or they don't want to do, but at the same time,
We're really not asking for very much.
I
but
understand.
we
I
could
asked for
open it
plants
up,
and
I'll
got a
ask
frown.
do you want to leave with a continuance so you can come back with the redesign, or would you want to add a 3-inch pop out to the metal trim?
Come to the front.
Great conversation. I appreciate your guys' deliberation on the project. The metal trim does have a projection that comes out. If we could go to the floor plan, if you wouldn't mind. But to answer your question, yes, not only from an architectural design standpoint, from having that articulation is having that metal trim important, but it also is important just from a construction standpoint, from having proper drainage you flash that trim and the water comes down, goes through the stucco, hits the building paper and flashes out. So it's important to have that. And I will assure you, as I stand here, that as you look at this home when it's done, it'll be the nicest home, or one of the nicest homes on the street. I'll be more than happy to provide the homes that I built in the neighborhoods that you can go by and look at. 2348 Manchester, 2334 Manchester, 2334 Newcastle, 233 Newcastle actually won an award, an architectural award on. It's very similar design, but different. I don't do the same design ever. And also because of the location of the alley in relation to the street, obviously this is a new design, but I've done everything from the alley up, alley down. And I can assure you that the design standards that you're discussing, you'll be very happy with when the project's complete. But to answer your question specifically, we will do, there's no objection to having that 3-inch projection. There'd probably be about a 3-inch projection on for the stucco to metal band.
Sure. I noticed that there's no window trim around any of the windows, not the windows in the wood siding, nothing around the windows on the stucco. Is this a conscious decision on your part that you think that's the design aesthetic that you prefer?
So I would agree that colored rendering, both the 3-dimensional rendering would be helpful in viewing a 2-dimensional black and white drawing, but there will obviously be trim around where the wood intersects the window, but the color palette for this project is that you have black window frames, and so it offers a lot of contrast between the white stucco and the black window frames. And so the absence of any kind of additional stucco trim or anything like that, it was intentional just to give that contrast for the windows.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I think there's a motion on the table. If it's not on the table, I'll make a motion to approve the project with 2 conditions. The metal trim used to delineate the upper floor from the lower floor have a projection of 2 to 3 inches. And that there was a cleanup in the staff report to include the word exception instead of exemption. And this is to your earlier point, Bob. And I'll leave that as my motion.
Second?
So, second, we'll call the vote. Okay, that vote, or that project passes 5-0. I think we're still doing fine at 7 o'clock, right? Our next project is item 8B, Little More Cafe, ABC license type 41, case number multi-007-130, 2024. Are there any disclosures by the commission?
I do have a disclosure. As part of my work, I did survey the location, did an inspection of the entire property. It was likely sometime last summer. At that time, I definitely spoke with the applicant, as well went to the location and spent some time on the property. It was prior to the interior being finished. Other than that, I don't think it will have any implication on my opinion of the project. Since then, I've had no contact with the applicant in any way.
So this involvement doesn't impede your ability to make a decision tonight, unbiased decision?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, and I've driven by the site.
Same.
All right. With that, we will turn it over for a staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a minor use permit for the A Little More Cafe. The project site is located at 698 North Coast Highway 101. It occupies one of the 3 tenant spaces in the former Shadow Building that was destroyed by fire in 2019 and rebuilt in 2024. Building is located on the corner of Daphne and North Coast Highway 101. The other tenants in this building include the Lucadia Barbershop in the front and Peace Pies in the rear. The 2 discretionary actions permits that are required to serve alcohol is a minor use permit for a type 41 to serve beer and wine for the existing restaurant. They are currently open. And the project also requires a coastal development permit. The restaurant is currently open and is open for breakfast and lunch only. The building shell was approved in 2020 with a design review in CDP, and the building permit for the restaurant was issued last year. No physical changes are required. The type 41 is just for the service of beer and wine. There's an indoor area that is approximately 475 square feet and an outdoor patio that is 285 square feet, and the interior bar is about 170 square feet. Key project features. Type 41 license would authorize on-site consumption of beer and wine indoors and the outdoor patio. Distilled spirits are prohibited except for cooking. Currently, the restaurant, as I said, is open for breakfast and lunch. However, with the issuance of the Type 41, the proposed operating hours and alcohol hours would be daily, Monday through Monday, 7 to 11 for the indoor, and the outdoor patio would be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., consistent with all of the other outdoor dining. Food service is available at all times, and no live entertainment and dancing is proposed. CPP meeting was held on March 19. 5 neighbors attended. The issues regarded alcohol until 11. There was limited parking in the vicinity. They've seen illegal parking in the red zones. One neighbor expressed support, another neighbor did not support, and there was concern about late night music and noise. The applicant responded in kind, saying they will encourage everyone to park along the railroad tracks as part of the 101 street improvements, encourage neighbors to be mindful when exiting and arriving at the restaurant, and reminded them that they are proposing 11 p.m. indoor alcohol service and 10 p.m. outdoor service. Public notice was mailed on March 20, and no letters and comments have been received leading up to today's hearing. Staff recommends approval of this project. The minor use permit would authorize beer and wine service for the restaurant. The alcohol service would be compatible with the commercial vicinity along 101, and with the findings can be made, and as conditioned, we recommend approval. This concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Are there any questions of the staff?
I have a quick question. Where is the outdoor patio located?
Oh,
I just have a hard time
do you
finding
see
it.
this photo here? I have it, the top with the Tesla, with the yellow fire hydrant.
Yes.
That's an outdoor patio right there, where the notch in the building. Do you see on the floor plan right there where it says in the top right corner, there's an umbrella? Or let me go to the, hold on, let me shift screens.
In that floor plan, the highway
Here we
is to
go.
the right.
Is it
Here,
on,
let me-
is it on Diana?
No, Daphne.
I mean,
Daphne and
Daphne's,
one-
I mean, it's not the outdoor patio is on Daphne, it's not on the 101?
It's on the corner.
both.
Here, if you look at this photo right here.
In the front.
Yeah, it's in the front. Do you see that notch in the building, if you will? That's the patio.
No, I've been by the building a lot of times. So it's not right there in the corner in the front. It's right there in the front, next to the barber shop.
Yes.
Okay.
You see that awning
I guess
there?
I maybe there weren't tables there when I walked by last. Okay, thank you.
I had a question regarding the hours of service.
Yeah.
You stated it was consistent with the area.
Yeah.
And the only one that I could see on the list of other businesses was one that was pending?
Give me a second here. I have a slide. So here's the hours of operation. Sorry if it's a little small. Of other alcohol serving restaurants in the vicinity, about a third of a mile. Most of them end around 10 o'clock typically on.
My question
Go
had to do
ahead.
with the beginning,
Oh, okay.
starting time.
Oh, the 7 o'clock?
Correct.
Yeah, the only one 7 o'clock that it's comparable to would be Market, which is a market, like a glorified 7-Eleven, if
Which
you will.
which is stated as pending?
No, they're actually, well, it's pending because they are open, but they're closed for the season.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion.
So in that regards, it's not necessarily consistent with the area.
Well, Market will reopen, and then it would be
But that would be the
consistent.
only one.
That is the only one that's open at 7, but at the same time, these guys serve breakfast. None of these other places serve breakfast.
Oh, Papagayo serves breakfast.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Oh, and Nectarine Grove, but they have 8
Thank
o'clock.
you. Sorry.
So would the alcohol, I'm sorry. So would the alcohol license allow them to sell alcohol at 7 a.m.
That's correct.
under the application?
That's what they're requesting.
That's what they're requesting. They also seem to be requesting, what was the original conditional use permit or minor use, I guess it was a minor use permit back in 2020? What were the hours that they applied
No,
to?
so that was just a building shell. So there's no history of alcohol on the property. So it
Okay.
used to be the former Chateau building, Chateau's T-shirts, Mosey Cafe, an art studio, and Peace Pies burned down. So there's no history of alcohol at the property.
So when they applied for did they have to apply for original permit to open up the restaurant?
No, the restaurant is allowed by right.
Okay.
So what came through in 2020, it was the building shell, if
Right.
you will, design review and coastal development permit to reestablish the building. So these guys are now moving in and replacing Mosey, if you will.
Okay, all right. Guess that really wasn't required to say, but that would be interesting to note in the staff report that this is replacing an existing restaurant, but in essence adding to the hours of the
Sure.
existing restaurant. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, that was one of my questions also is, do all the businesses listed below, and I'm looking at the staff report, so Papagayo, Regal Seagull, Duck Fruit Tasting, all have type 41 license?
No. There's, so we have, at last, so we have one type 2. The Solterra is the only one that has a type 2, type 3, and type 6. We have one package store, the Lucadia Liquor Store, type 21.
Right.
And I tried to organize the table in
you're right.
relationship
I
with
see
Little
that now.
More in Cafe in the middle.
Yeah.
Type 41 is beer and wine, and I think I counted 6. And type 47, I may have counted 7. Forgive me.
And consistent with Commissioner Whitaker, I counted only 3 restaurants that serve alcohol until 11. Tavi, Regal Siegel,
It's a small beer manufacturer.
and then this would be the third. And there's how many on the list?
If I counted correctly, Solterra is that type 2-3, Lucadia Liquor, type 21, Duckfoot is the type 23 small beer manufacturer. There is currently 6 type 41s, so with Little More Cafe, there would be 7.
I'm looking at the hours of operation, but
Oh,
you
you're
can't
looking at hours of-
say a liquor store is consistent with the food store. So let's be. I'm trying to be
Fair enough.
consistent. Let's look at those establishments in your staff report that have service till 11 with alcohol. I counted Tavi. One.
Can I interrupt real quick
Yeah.
on this topic? Only because we've had I just want to make sure we're talking about the same kind of hours, because we've had this conversation before where the reports and us kind of get confused between what the hours of operation are of the restaurant versus what their liquor license actually allows them
Okay.
to do. Because I feel like we find that a lot of them might have a liquor license that might go to 11 or 12, but then when it shows up on the staff report, because they advertise that they close at 10 o'clock, that's what shows up on the staff report. So I just wanted to make
Yeah, no,
that comment
that's a
kind of
great
before we
clarification.
went down that path, because some of these might actually have a liquor license that allows them to serve later. They just don't stay open that late.
Well, then I think that in terms of going forward on the staff report, that should be identified so we don't have the same
Right.
conversation. Well, I don't have the same conversation each time.
Right, because as I looked at this, I wondered that same question.
Right, because I don't think the definition of consistent when you're looking at 3 out of 10 is or 4 out of 10 is consistent. So I think maybe 50-50 is consistent, 60-40, I think a majority, but I don't like the word consistent.
Okay, but let's make that a deliberation. because-
Okay. So the operational hours are changing for the sole purpose, and I guess does the operational hours, they don't have to come back to us for an approval for operational hours, is that correct?
As a restaurant.
As a
if we
restaurant.
Yeah, as a restaurant, that's allowed
That's
by
right,
right.
that's allowed. So they can serve dinner until the
All
required
24 hours
Okay.
if they really wanted to.
All right. Last question. How does the lack of parking factor into the site's compliance and to the existing zoning codes? So that's I think that's a staff question.
So in the Lucadia 101 specific plan, there
Mm-hmm.
is an allowance. They get a break in parking, fully recognizing that it's small lot development. There is a code allowance. It's like parking strategy 3 that allows a change of use, even from retail, which has 1 parking ratio, to restaurant, to change freely. So that's exactly what's happening here.
But it's not a change of use, so that doesn't apply.
Yeah, change of use does not apply in applying the parking ratios in the 101 specific plan.
Got it. Okay. That's it.
Okay,
You don't consider adding alcohol intensification of use?
Alcohol is accessory to the primary restaurant use.
and it's not a non-conforming issue. It's written into the specific plan that they want to encourage a small business of any sort, restaurant or retail, to come into these buildings.
That's correct. The underlying zoning is NCM1, so it's a commercial mixed zone.
Okay. I think the applicant is here. Would you like to make any sort of presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Matt Fredericks, project representative. Anna, thank you for your service on many projects, and Jay, thank you for your service. I do have one of the owners, Jennifer Winter, here, who would like to speak on her baby, her project. So.
Hi. So, A Little More Cafe is really personal to me. I grew up here. I remember when it was very small. If you just drive down Vulcan and the first right turn after Encinitas Boulevard is Sunset Drive, and you drive to the top of that where they're building this huge home. Well, that is where my dad's home was, and that is the house I grew up in. So being able to hold on to a little piece of old Encinitas, this is a business that we acquired that had been in the community a very long time. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of what I know. And so being able to continue business and get this license will help us stay in business, because we really want to provide the service of dinner and being able to come enjoy with your family responsibly. And, you know, we don't want to cause any commotion we love this city. We want it to stay cute. We want it to stay and feel like home. I remember, so my dad was a fire captain, and I remember him telling stories about him and his buddies dragging those old telephone poles and creating those volleyball courts at Moonlight Beach when it was really, you know, a very small place, when the snack shack was really a shack. And I mean, this is very personal to me, and we plan on putting up his classic old surfboard. We're restoring it right now and putting a plaque there that says Grandpa Bob's board, and like just really making it still feel like old Encinitas, just with the decor, with some of the decorations, with you know, the dinner menu, such as, or the breakfast, it's Bob's Slam, and that was what he would eat every morning, you know. And we don't have Keno's anymore, but I really want to hold on to this, and this will help make it possible for us to stay viable and hold on to a little piece of this history. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the applicant? Or was that, I'm sorry.
Just one more thing. Yeah, Ms. Ryan was correct in that a lot of the licenses on that list do have later hours. Like Hamburger Hut can go, I think they can actually go to 1 a.m. That's their operational hours, where they are just not operating later. I think Papagayo has later hours. Vigalucci's does. So they are able to operate later. They just don't right now. So.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? I'm going to close the public comment portion of this hearing and open it up to commissioner deliberations.
Well, it's certainly pulling at my heartstrings there, for sure, keeping it real. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's a nice location. It's certainly very close to surrounding businesses, but the outdoor area does face the Coast Highway, and so noise will be somewhat abated with that.
Could I take a quick timeout? Were there any public comments on this issue? Public? Okay. Thank you. I just forgot to ask that. Sorry, Brent.
That's okay. I did have some concerns about the early hour of the service being provided, but nothing that it, you know, bringing it to the level of objecting or anything, or wanting to create any further guidelines. I think they sound very responsible.
Okay, so I actually appreciate this business as well. I used to live right up the street from a little more when it was in North Leucadia, and we would walk down for breakfast all the time at the old site. So it really does mean a lot to me that you're able to bring the restaurant, the name, and bring the restaurant back to Leucadia. So I really appreciate that. And I don't really have any issues with the early hours. It's a restaurant that's going to serve breakfast. And I would suspect I know we've approved other early hours before too, for people serving breakfast, because it might be a mimosa or a Bloody Mary or some drink, you know, breakfast type alcoholic beverage. So I don't think having alcoholic beverages like that, you know, in the morning hours is inconsistent with people's habits. And I think as far as the 11 p.m., I do know we have a lot of projects that we've approved that have a liquor license that goes much later than what they choose to have as their hours of operation, because of the business sense of keeping an restaurant open that late. So I suspect that here, over time, they'll adjust their hours of operation based on their business model and how business is going at those particular times. So I don't have any issues with the hours of the liquor license.
Okay. I was in support of it. I was going to put it on the consent calendar, so Bob, you
I
did
just,
not
no,
want
no,
to.
I just had some questions that they were answering, and I think it's almost ironic that there's a barber shop next to the cafe, because if I recall, Little More had a barber shop next before you got to Hurley's. So, maybe we're just kind of bringing back the old days, but I appreciate you trying to operate a business and grow it, and your little piece of Leucadia also. So, no, I pulled it from consent because I just wanted to ask some questions, primarily about the liquor license. The deliberation component comes to, it'd be great if in future staff reports to eliminate the dialogue that we had, that Chris had to remind me, is that there are different hours. And so what's posted here in the staff report is what I focused on, not maybe having the background knowing that there is additional. So to me, a more complete, maybe one more column would be helpful of what they're allowed to do under the law. Would be, that way I don't have to ask that question or pull it from consent next time.
Okay, good comment. Susan, do you have any comments?
Really, I think it nice to bring back some of the flavor of the prior restaurant. And as far as the liquor license, I concur with Commissioner Ryan. We have approved such as that time, and breakfast does include alcohol sometimes for some people. So I'm okay. I can support it.
Can I get a motion from someone?
I'll make a motion to approve the project.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Having a motion and a second, I'll call the vote. That passes 5-0. You've got your liquor license, or at least from this group. Yes, thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 9, future agenda items added by planning commissioners. Are there any?
No, just to follow up to the ad hoc Affordable Housing Committee, or group, we submitted some changes back to Patty Anders, and she's just putting some, city ease on top of it before we submit it back to you guys for review and for review. So I think we're another 2 weeks away, so that'll be, I think it's submitted, but we haven't approved it, so I think we have until 72 hours before the Monday, which is 72 hours before the agenda gets posted. So anyway, Anna might miss it.
Oh, yeah, I'll just make so 72 hours is the allowable by state law. However, we would prefer to have it as part of the entire agenda packet, which gets posted the Thursday prior, if at all feasible.
We've missed that each time, but hopefully on your behalf, we will do it. We'll try a little harder. We're almost there.
Anna doesn't really care.
No, I don't. It's my parting goodwill.
Okay, are there, I'll take that as a planning commission report, but are there any others?
I do have an item. I want to speak to the public comment that we received at our last meeting. First of all, I appreciate very much all of the public comments and highly value Susan Turney. I mean no disrespect to Susan Turney in my response to her comment last meeting, and I apologize unequivocally to her for my response, which was incomplete and therefore probably a bit unclear. We gave our final report in text format, and although we included a slightly updated slide deck for reference, the word phrasing of behind the curve was primarily met in the context of the RHNA compliance tracker, which demonstrates a disparity of above moderate homes to required affordable homes projected, entitled, or built for Encinitas. So the thrust of the Streamline report was perhaps unclear, and we probably should have explained at the prior meeting that the slide deck was just to show our history and wasn't really part of the report. And also, we had a few punctuation issues which were unclear, and Patty Anders is helping us clear that up, polish it up. So we'll be bringing it back. And we did find during our research that we do not have some types of housing that other jurisdictions have created. So that also kind of played into the wording of it, maybe wasn't as clear, but we don't have some types that others have. So that the way that I worded it may have been a bit unclear, but we're working on it. It's a document in progress. We're polishing it. And I would like to point out that I kind of abbreviated my response to that comment that was made by just summing it up and saying we were looking at the compliance tracker primarily. But I certainly meant no disrespect, and I do feel that the information provided in public comments does inform the Planning Commission at times, and it's very important, and I wish more public comments were offered to provide that kind of insight. So that's all. I just wanted to be sure that she knows that I appreciate that she comes and comments and adds to our information.
Okay, thank you, Susan, and thank you for your work on that report with Bob, the two of you. Can we open it to secretary reports?
Yes, of course. One item I just wanted to inform you all of, April 8th, there's the Climate Action Plan Workshop that will be occurring at City Hall, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. So there's that one. And then you will all heard you provided feedback on the mobility element, and we are now going to City Council on April 9th for their feedback on it. And those are the two items. And I did want to address the nice comments from the beginning. Thank you so much. Actually very hard not to get emotional about this, but I've really enjoyed serving the city of Encinitas, and definitely will be watching and cheering everyone on. And I've just both been through so much career-wise and personal that this city has gotten me through, and I can't tell you how much I'm going to miss this place. And the decision was absolutely difficult because of the people here, both Planning Commission, City Council staff, and the residents. It's just been such a pleasure to work with everyone. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Anna, and I hope you know that we can find a seat for you anytime you're ready to come back. So.
Thank you.
With that, I will adjourn it. And
Wait. Don't I get to say my nice things? Or did I miss that opportunity?
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm gonna shoot from the hip. I just want to say thank you. I've only been doing this for a little while, and you've helped a lot. It's complicated stuff. I see Bruce is in the audience, and he's helped too. But there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to know. And clearly, every time up here, I feel like I'm learning something new. And you've always been there to help me understand it. I don't always understand it, but you've been very patient with me many, many times, probably asking the same question each time. But I appreciate you and the work that you've done, and the city should appreciate you for all that you've done over the last 10 years. You are a good person, you're smart, you're knowledgeable, you'll be hugely successful. I think it's a big loss for us to lose you, but I guess you'll never be gone. You'll always be part of Encinitas lore, because your name will be on documents forever. So everybody's going to always reference you, and I'm sure you get a bunch of phone calls. And I want to let the world know that Anna and I went to the same middle school out in Poway, Meadowbrook. So not at the same time. No, I preceded her just a few years behind that, and she went to my rival high school, Mount Carmel. I went to Poway, so I guess we'll always have that. But thank you so much for all you've done for the city, for me, for the Planning Commission, for staff. You've been a mentor to many, I'm sure, within your department, and you'll be missed. So good luck and take care.
Right. I'd like to say a few things too. little bit of a repeat of what other people have said, but Anna, you just always made me feel so welcome, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer all of my questions and answering them in a way that didn't make me feel stupid. Because I know sometimes you'd be like, "Oh, that's a good question." I'm like, "Is it?" I don't know. But thank you for saying that it was a good question, even though it may not have always been a good question. But I really appreciate your support throughout my time here, and I really got to enjoy getting to know you when we went to the trainings too. It was really great to get to know you. So good luck with everything. We're going to really miss you.
Okay, will I get my chance? Having served longest out of us, I had the pleasure of attending Planning Commissioner training up in Sacramento with Anna right before COVID hit us. And she was very kind and very informative. And I really do appreciate that we've sort of grown together. Although I would say you rose like a meteor through all of these transitions, and you deserve it.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Oh, please, yes. I will open up oral comments for the mayor and ex-commissioner. Yeah, really. The more important one.
So, yeah, can you hear me? So, thank you, Anna. I had to come. I had to thank you, too. I had the advantage of serving with Bill Weedman as the secretary, Roy as the secretary, and you were right up there as good as any of them, and I really appreciate your honesty, your straightforwardness, your patience with us, especially me, seeing all the detailed questions constantly, now as mayor too. So I'm going to miss you sorely. I really appreciate the time you spent with us, and boy, the sentiment is exactly the same. That shows how good you are, is that every one of these people are going, you're going to be missed, so come back soon. Okay? Thank you.
So I have to say something too, because since we're doing this. So Anna, I've very much enjoyed working with you, and there are in my career I've racked up a number of planning directors that know their stuff, and you are definitely in that list. The amount of institutional knowledge that you have here is astounding, and one of the things that I greatly appreciate about you, and frankly, the commissioners may not recognize about you, because when we have closed door discussions, always she is incredibly respectful of everybody on the commission and everybody on the city council, and honestly believes in our role as staff, and that's something I believe in too, that our role is to provide you the best evidence we possibly can, and you guys make the decisions. We can encourage certain things based on what our professional expertise is, but you know that role, and you live that role, and you've been always professional, even behind closed doors. And I think that is the definition of integrity. Being who you are in public is the same person who you are in private. And I very much appreciate that about you.
Before any singing breaks out, I'm going to, I will adjourn this. I think we have some cheesecake and some
So
stories
it's
still
been
to tell.
downgraded to cake, but yes,
Okay.
we have cake.
All right. With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting until the April 17th meeting. And with that, good night.